Hello and welcome to, well, this is probably, and should be if it's picking me up, he says, should be, part 2, no, part 5, section B. Yes, that's it, part 5, section B, sorry. Worrying about this picking me up and actually making me sound like I'm not speaking at normal levels is causing me fun today. So, this is a continuation of the part 5, which was looking at the idea of the Axis forces, the fascist forces, joining in the point of the war, probably turning up late because it would take them a while to get their forces together and actually get in. If they start off by doing it immediately, they would have got into trouble. And this is, of course, all recorded with Daniel Freeman. So, I hope you enjoy. I would add... Let's see what I had today. No, I think it's all good. As you can see, I'm editing this on another day than I edited the first part. It's been one of those weeks. It's been rather fun getting this all together. A lot of extra work, but a lot of fun. So I think I'll do it again sometime with other people. Daniel's also talking about doing more things, so it could be a lot of fun. And yeah, generally, I hope you've just been enjoying it and finding it interesting. Right then, without much further ado, let's say goodbye to me for a second. And hopefully, this will now play.
Say 1991. And the joys of television warfare about the effectiveness, because we've had a huge amount of guided munitions that are air launched, which is a lot less tricky, or not having to bash things around, run around to avoid getting shot back at when you're launching your long-range missile. And these are all missile launched, not necessarily gun launched things we're sending out.
Yep. They tend to have
something. It's a lovely idea, but I worry about what you're doing to it. And whilst I think we might just about be able to do it now, reasonably, reliably, I haven't seen it tested.
No.
I haven't seen it tested in big numbers of production lots. And as in, I don't think the world has. And we might be disappointed by the results.
We might well be.
Which is a line of thought I hadn't actually occurred to me before. Sorry. Yeah, so we're burning through ammunition, because also you're going to take lucky. It's this whole difference between war games or exercises and real life. You are going to take those low percentage shots because there's any percentage in it.
Yes.
You're going to be practicing a lot harder because you want to actually know what you're doing, and it's worth doing it properly. So suddenly drill rounds, as opposed to using proper live ammunition, different category. And you're going to want to, and you're going to be losing some of it because you're going to be putting supplies forward so you can resupply easily, and some of that's just going to get hit and lost. Just the friction of war is such. So we've got so basically the Royal Navy and the French Navy now need to find a way of quickly smashing the Italians with kind of their afterthought fleet.
What's their advantage?
So the advantages they've got are they aren't Italian, so they don't have quite such cripplingly inept leadership. Although, again, your best leader has probably been sent out to the Far East, so you're ending up in an almost reverse Singapore. You've got bases at Malta, Alexandria. You've got the French bases, Toulon.
As long as France is still in the war.
Yeah. You've got Gibraltar as well, so you can control access. You can get your submarines in, and I think that one thing is that the Royal Navy has a huge stock of submarines in the home fleet at this point, and in the reserves, which they will be activating, and so won't have made it out to the Far East yet. So that's something which they can.
The submarines are slower to activate than big ships, but some of their bigger submarines will have gone. But there again, the reserve submarines are mostly the smaller ones, which are mostly better for the Mediterranean.
Yeah. So we see the revitalization of the 10th Squadron. You've got some MTBs, although I haven't written down how many.
That would probably be in production. Those would probably be rapidly ramped up. Because you must remember again, the British and the French will have been operating on the scenario that the British would have been going, right, we're having to send our major fleet units out to the Far East. We need to secure the home. How are we going to secure the home? Yes, the Air Force would have probably gone, we can do it with our bombers, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Lovely. But the Navy would have probably been ramping up what productions it could of things as well. And the good thing about motor torpedo boats is they don't interfere with production of your big ships.
Yeah. And one of the... Now, at this stage, it's worth saying in terms of production, I was just trying to have a look about what's happening with your... the lovely King George V class. Albeit, sadly, with the 14-inch guns. You had King George V and Prince of Wales laid down in January 37, launching in February 39 and May 39, but then taking quite a long time to commission. Now, I know King George V is going to be first of class, and you do not launch a ship when it's ready for battle by any stretch of the imagination. But you can probably speed that up to some extent.
Yep. Same with the carriers going through the process. I think we both agree that sort of if war starts in January 1939 in the Far East, carriers and battleships are going to get extremely accelerated in their productions. And cruisers.
Yeah. Now, the problem is which cruisers are being built at that point?
Didos and Crown Colonies.
Is there any way we can change that to some more town class?
Unfortunately not. We'd have to change history now. But yeah, town class are prettier.
Yeah, the Crown Colony class just always feel like they are...
Someone decided, took the town design, said, what can we strip out to make this as quick as the producers possible, and basically churn them out.
Yeah. And, I mean, at that stage, I would just be pulling out the... X-turret for more other stuff, because I think they're overgunned for their size. Things. And they just make me sad.
Yeah, basically, you know, you've got Belfast and Edinburgh.
Yeah,
we've been coming through, but the trouble is, I wouldn't be surprised if any town class cruisers which launched in 1939 would have been rapidly dispatched to the Far East.
Yeah, they're gonna go quickly, and they were commissioning in. Oh, I did have this one written down as part of my prep work. Blah 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 blah. Somewhere. I think they were. I want to say something like February and May, but I could be wrong on that. They commissioned. Because they joined the home fleet. Which I did write down about somewhere. This is so annoying. Because you had the second cruiser squadron in the home fleet.
Mm-hmm.
which had 4 town classes and Cornwall.
And then you have the 12th Cruiser Squadron and the 18th Cruiser Squadron get formed.
Yeah. And I don't seem to have written down the details of them in my random notes, or at least not that I can.
12th and the 18th. The 12th Cruiser Squadron is really formed of D's, E's, and C's. Is how I usually describe it. It's the cruisers which are activated from reserve to back it up. 18th is the town cruiser squadron, which is really an enhanced force, and those are supposed to be your northern barrier. Trouble is, most of the 18th would have probably been formed and dispatched to the far east, so you would be depending on the 12th, which are 6-inch cruisers of 1920s vintage mostly.
Mm.
They're quite nice ships in some respects. You know, you've got the fact that I'm currently doing a live today on the E-class, and the introductions to them have been emphasizing that both ships were used in the flagship role, and both ships were capable of 33 knots for most of their life, which meant that they were still being used as the fast flagships in Somerville's Indian Ocean cruiser force. He was using E-class as his flagships, and we were going, why? Well, they're freaking fast.
Yeah, I mean they were, and I mean even the C's were being turned into anti-aircraft cruisers, but that's partly because they had this. The problem with all of these is they have the single 6-inch mounts.
Mm-hmm.
That's the drawback of them.
And I have a feeling, again, in this scenario, if you're fighting off against Japan, because of the style of war versus the 4-inch mount, I think you'd be getting the 4.5s put in, where they could be on the Ds. I think you might have had a reverse scenario in that I think you could have had the Ds, especially the ones being activated, going in for 4.5 inches to be put into them. And let's see, by May, June time, let's see, January, February, March, April, May, 5-6 months, I reckon you've had at least one of the D class, if not two, come up with 4.5-inch guns in place.
Yeah. It's better than Dido.
Let's be honest, if you're carrying 8 to 10 4.5-inch double guns, okay, yes, you're not a threat to many cruisers, but there aren't many destroyers which are going to be able to hold against you. And with 4 treble or 4 quadruple torpedo tubes, plus various forms of high anti-air weaponry, you are going to be an excellent convoy escort.
Yes,
because if you're a surface raider and you think, right, I really want to go for, it's got light, yes, old style, but light cruiser level armor, so it's not going to be as easy to annihilate. You're going to be able to annihilate, it's not going to be easy to knock out the way as a destroyer. But it's can fire a fairly heavy spread of torpedoes, which if they hit me are going to do a lot of damage and are going to end my career. So it becomes a risk fleet unit. Okay, it's got so your submarines, if they're attacking, are going to want to be under the water.
Yep. Which
reduces their ability to engage their torpedoes.
Yep.
It's got torpedoes to scare off the enemy bigger ships. It's got depth charges to attack submarines. And it's going to have quite a lot of hefty firepower for dealing with aircraft, because let's be honest, the 4.5-inch was a fairly good AA weapon. And if you've got enough pom-poms, again, it's a fairly well-balanced all-round vessel.
Yeah, I mean, you're suddenly going to have to stick a 6-inch cruiser or an 8-inch cruiser between them and a convoy, rather than being able to have an escort with a close screen of destroyers, because they'll be blown through.
Mm-hmm.
And having you've blown through the destroyers with your nice battery of 4.5s. You've then got the torpedoes to take out all the transports. So you need to be able to put them down fast and hard, don't you?
Yeah, and
They're
that's the thing. If they're defending the convoy, they're actually a very good convoy deterrent and defense because, yes, they're not an all angles attack. But if you're talking a surface raider, okay, there's one of those modified ones sitting there. They've got destroyers and they've got and we know how aggressive the destroyers normally are. Imagine what they're going to be like with that thing coming along behind them, going, "Follow me, boys."
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be you're going to have an aggressive weight of things, and as the defender, your attention is going to be divided, because do you go for the easy wins where one hit is quite likely to functionally take a ship out if you've got 6 and 8-inch guns, which is the destroyers, or do you take out the one that's got even more guns, is going to play merry hell with your destroyers, and has got a lot of torpedoes as well, but can probably take a couple of hits.
Yeah.
And still be annoying.
Yeah, that's the trouble. That's the whole fight. The D-class, as I said, have options, and I think the plans were in the table for both conversions, for the C-class to AA cruisers, for the D-class to these things. Interesting enough, the E-class, well, you have the fact that they have one of them already has a Leander-style double turret at Enterprise, a double 6-inch turret. So the question becomes: could they have fitted more 6-inch turrets to them, or could they have gone for a mixed armament of 4.5s and 6-inch turrets? It's an interesting scenario, because think about it, if you're dealing with something which has 2-wing 4.5-inch double turrets. And has a double 6 forward, a double 6 aft, and another double 4.5-inch aft. So it's got 4 6-inch guns in 2 turrets and 6 4.5s in 3 turrets. That's again something which I'm not too keen on dealing with as a surface raider.
No.
Especially when it's got those big that torpedo mix. It's got enough, it's going to cause me damage. And the trouble is, as a surface raider, my whole existence depends on not getting damaged.
Yeah. I need to pop to the loo.
Okay.
Sorry. I've had a lot of fluid since my last, so I'll be back in a sec.
All right.
I'm just wondering, the E-class cruisers.
Yep.
So if we took them and the Crown Colony class were being built at this stage, and they had triple turrets, which weighed 161 tons. I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to find out how much the guns on the D class weighed, and whether I could drop in a couple of 3-inch turrets and strip off other bits.
Well, the E-class could take at least 1 forward double turret, and that came at the expense of 2 6-inch mounts. So when you've got 2 individual 6-inch mounts, roughly, and then added 30 more tons on. So that explains most of the difference between weight between Enterprise and Emerald. So you could probably do some work. See, the thing is, I'm looking at my the lovely drawings I have here. You see, that would be how I would do it. I would add another double 6-inch, and I would add in 3 4.5s, double 4.5s. That's how I'd manage it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the what's in production, because they will presumably have built the triple 6-inch turrets for the for at least some of the Crown colonies at that stage.
They'd had some spare left over from the Leander and Arethusa line, so double 6 inches.
Did they?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, stick them on. I was trying to think what was available, but I mean, it's looking as though the you're talking the mounts without a gun shield for the 6-inch guns on a D class with a CP type 14 or 16, which look like they weigh about 15 tons. So it's a huge amount of added extra top weight.
Yep.
So I think that would massively unbalance the ships, and I would not want to go to sea in something that suddenly had that much weight added to it.
You would probably, you know, you could do it with that and that, but
yeah, you could do it with the. You could probably get away with it just about with a twin, with the twins on, but not the triples.
Mm-hmm.
Could you drop a triple onto a Leander class?
You can dream about it, but it would be very difficult to their lines. See, the thing is, because the E class has already been done, it shows it can be done.
Yeah. Just trying to sort of think about upgunning and annoying people by kind of sinking their ships. What's this? Sorry, I'm suddenly struggling. This is all looking at the nav weapons site. It's, yeah, it feels like there'd be possibilities. Actually, you could do it if you could. If you swapped, assuming that the kind of turret rings allow, if you swapped out the Mark 21 turrets on the Leander class, of which there are 4, which weigh 91 tons.
Yep.
With the Mark 23s of the Ceylon class,
yeah,
which weigh 161 tons each,
you're
actually reducing the weight of gun turrets. If you've gone from 4 to 3, you've added an extra gun, and you've got the X turret position free to stick an extra 4.5 or something for anti-air, or a 4-inch. And you've suddenly got your Leander.
116 tons or 161 tons, did you say?
161. So you've got 4 91 tons. So that's going to be
364 tons.
Yeah. Versus 3 times 16, which is that's going to be 480. Damn.
120 tons more.
Yeah. Can you take off? You can't easily take off 120 tons.
In a 6,500 ton cruiser?
No. You could swap.
120 tons is a lot.
You could swap to. You could do it in the A and the Y position. Keep the twin turret in B and bin X, and then you've got.
I think you're looking at the wrong cruisers to modify. Look at the Frobisher class.
Ooh, which ones are they?
The 7.5-inch heavy cruisers.
Ah.
Now, some of them were dropped down to 6-inch guns because they could carry 9 individual 6-inch guns.
Oh, is that one of the Hawk? That's the Hawkins lot,
Yeah.
isn't it? Mm.
Yep. I tend to call them Frobishers.
Was Frobisher the first one completed, or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yeah, there's often that disparity between the different way that things are ordered, isn't there?
Yeah. And I like to annoy people sometimes.
I just don't know a huge amount about them. To be honest, but I guess that they were the only things using a 7.5-inch gun at that sort of time, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can ditch their guns, then you're not having to worry about making any of that ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And their guns, bearing in mind Hawkins has 7 of them, or Frobisher class has 7, are 46 tons
Each.
I may need to open up the calculator app on my computer again, because maths is not my strong point.
322 tons.
Oh. That sounds like a similar-ish number to one we've seen before.
Yep.
So, using our spare turrets, we can be doing some damage.
And those are 10,000-ton cruisers.
Yeah.
So them actually, in the nicest way, you can add some weight onto.
Yeah. What's the layout of their guns? You get up Brassey's Naval Guide image from Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
So they have 3 on a center line. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have 2 on a center line forward, and they have 2 wing turrets.
Mm-hmm.
Positions. Well, no one likes a wing position. And you could use. Now they've been with God knows what you call them. But I'd stick 2 forward, 2 aft, basically. Yeah. And then swap in the rest for lighter guns.
I'd say 1 forward, 2 aft.
Yeah.
Okay, a convoy escort, it doesn't really matter if they're all aft, and actually that helps in a way.
Yeah. And the 2 aft, I mean, what you'd do is you'd get rid of the if you get rid of the aftmost non-super firing.
Yep.
You've got rid of the super firing B gun.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the 2 wing positions. What those are is very good positions with access to magazines and ammunition feeds.
For 4.5s.
For 4.5.
And actually, what she also has is she has 2 wing positions which have 4 inches on the later ones, and 2 which have 4.2, which are things. So actually, you could mount up 4 double 4.5s.
And that's really quite significant. And
still have space for 4 quadruple pom-poms, according to this outline. And honestly, if you only have 1 turret forward, you could also probably put in a double 4.5 for forward. So you've got 5 double 4.5s and 3 treble 6s.
And suddenly, I've cancelled my order for Didos.
Yeah, which makes you so happy.
And I'm suddenly going for a fourth cohort of town class. Because also, I don't have to worry about any naval treaties because I'm at war.
Yeah.
And also, in war, sadly, depressingly, I'm going to take losses. And so, if nothing else, I'm going to need replacements. And I'm going to expect my cruisers to be aggressive, and to take losses.
Yeah.
Or at least be damaged. And I think the other thing that we probably don't think about, but they would be conscious of, is the hard use and how war service accelerates the wear and tear on things.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to you're going to be doing more time. You're not going to have your periods of oh shit, go really quickly, be flexible and go, oh, we won't because the seas are a bit rough, so it's going to put strain on the frame. You're not going to do it and go, oh, but the engines have just done that, so we're not going to want to do that again. We've done our speed run for this trial and exercise. We'll slow down for a bit because we don't want to put too much wear on it. It'll be like, we need to go fast again, we go fast again.
Yep.
Whether the gears and all the other complicated engineering bits that go over my head care or not. Yeah.
There's some interesting modifications made, and honestly, this is the point at which the war play, the scenario we're looking at with the Germans and Italians, it sort of plays out is they're entering in a war which has already been going. So how does it affect how they're responding to it? What have they seen that will have impacted on their design and their philosophy? If there is a battle and let's say there has been a big battle in March, in April, which we did think there would be, and the Royal Navy has taken the Japanese. Well, that's going to free up some of those battleships to come back. So whilst they would prefer to keep them out, hello. Sorry, I have been joined by a cricket.
Oh, that's quite cool.
Yeah, it was quite cool. Made me jump a bit because he literally jumped on me.
Well, when I got up for my when I woke up this morning and was quite bleary, having for the sort of before I started hitting the snooze button for a good few hours, I discovered a spider dangling down from the ceiling above my bed. You know that thing of you eat 7 spiders or whatever nonsense it is? Yeah, I suddenly realised that this might be one of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
He or she went out the window.
That's nice. You didn't actually eat her.
Didn't eat and didn't kill.
I'm wondering where the cricket came from, because I don't know how it got in here. This is on the first floor of my house.
I
didn't realise I was surprised, but I didn't realise they could fly. Can they fly?
No idea.
I suddenly feel very bad because I have such little knowledge of crickets. I do apologise. This is an animal show, and we didn't even realise it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm more cats.
Dogs are my thing. Right. So, it's an interesting thing. It's basically the whole point of this is well, everyone wants to meet Raleigh. He's amazing, and I'm sure he would enjoy saying hello to you. The whole point with this scenario is that I think very quickly it degenerates into the Germans and Italians are even less prepared than they realise. The British and the French will have had to get more prepared because it's the difference between the British forces after 6 months of fighting. Yes, they've lost a lot of stuff, but by gum, have they probably built up stuff, and they've probably got quite a lot of experience going on. And in the nicest way, they're going to be very much out of the peacetime mentality.
Yes, you've also got Britain starting to make massive war orders in the States and France, putting in those huge orders earlier. Yeah. And being prepared to spend big bucks. And I was having a read about when I said I didn't know about FDR, one of the things I've done in my interim is trying to read up about FDR. And interestingly, this might be happening at a point when he's actually in a slightly tricky situation But equally, politically, things are a bit different. This window of sort of 38, 39, FDR did badly in the 38 midterms, so was kind of constrained. But what he was in a sort of position to be doing in that, but that meant that he, but at the same time, the kind of the opposition against him in other ways hadn't yet solidified. So when it comes to the 1940 election, which is going to be at the end of 1940, we're still in 1939. He's far enough away from election; he doesn't need to worry too much. His kind of support is coming from Southern Democrats. He's kind of getting support from Southern Democrats and business-oriented Republicans, apparently. But Lindbergh, who was very anti-war, it was more that he was very close to being a Nazi, and was very pro-German. He actually was happy to go and fight the Japanese. So he's not necessarily going to mind that.
That's the thing. Quite a lot of them will be, and actually, the amount of Americans who'd probably been pissed off, if they hadn't been involved in the war, that they weren't involved in the war fighting the Japanese because they saw them as the Yellow Peril. But again, if Germany and Italy suddenly, it's going to sound strange, stab Britain and France in the back.
Yeah.
By attacking, all those people have been saying how great and virtuous they're fighting Japan for us in the Pacific, and we're not fighting beside them. And the Germans and Italians have now stabbed them in the back.
Yeah. And the other thing about it is that at this stage, amusingly, the Republican nominee for the 1940 presidential election is still a Democrat. Is still part of FDR's party, and hasn't switched sides yet. So FDR is kind of doing what he's been doing has just cost him the midterms.
Yeah.
So actually, he's going to want to potentially do something slightly radical.
Which is why I think he would have found a way to join in on the side of the Brits in a war against Japan. But I think even in this case, he's sending a lot of supplies.
Yeah.
And again, if it's a scenario you get under what circumstances if the Germans and Italians do attack, do the Americans then get involved on the side of the Allies?
Or are they at least going to continue sort of these policies of kind of very skewed neutrality? And it's what can the US executive get away with without congressional permission?
Oh, yes.
Without a massive landslide. And bearing in mind this is going to be... So if you're suddenly getting all these orders for heavy industry, suddenly FDR is going to look better earlier in terms of his industrial support, both the workers and the businessmen who are being ticked off at being told they can't trade with Japan are actually now suddenly all of that plus more is being taken on by European people who aren't ethically challenged, and given there's racism, ethnically challenged as well.
Yep.
So actually it might help to swing things for him if it's started this way round. And then, I mean, it's going to be, if you've got enough American shipping going round, I mean, the Americans can just be shipping stuff straight across the Pacific.
They could well be.
To meet up with things. And you could also be having sort of support forces going through, training in America in the way that, the Commonwealth or whatever empire.
They'd probably be trading in Canada, but heavily supported by American industry.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much that even a nominally neutral America can do. that it's going to be difficult. The question is, how can they then help in Europe? Well, actually, if they did even more in the Pacific, if they started delivering, and if it's been a few months, they'll have had a chance to start making munitions and things. So if they're suddenly building munitions...
The question is, do you have the Liberty and Victory ship programs start earlier? Because, okay, not motivated by the Battle of Atlantic, but motivated by the need to supply forces in the Far East, you need ships.
Mm.
You need merchant ships. So I wonder if the Victory ship program especially gets started earlier.
Yeah, that's... yeah, I can certainly see some of that happening, and...
Which again gives Britain enough edge going into Battle Atlantic, but also means that you might well have had Liberty ships being ordered earlier from American yards. Because remember, maybe not warships you wouldn't order from American yards, but you might well order merchant vessels.
Yep, so you've got your merchant vessels, you've got bombs, bullets, shells, things like that, which then, if the Americans can escort across the Pacific for you, and deliver directly to your forces at Singapore.
Which probably FDR can do, because it's against
Which FDR
Japan.
can do, because let's face it, he did that across the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not having to worry about that so much, then that just frees up a load of forces anyway.
And the one problem is, if you're German and you're Italian and you're suddenly trying to destabilize, and honestly, you're going to have deliveries going to both the Britain in the UK and to Singapore, because you're going to need some of those supplies to equip the forces you're forming up and training and get them used to the equipment before when they're leaving Britain.
Mm.
Now, if I'm German and I am planning a big war versus Britain, one of the first things I want to take out has got to be those supply convoys. They become almost for me the version of the Spanish gold convoys. I've got to stop them somehow.
Yeah.
And if America's being benevolent but neutral, I might well decide that it's better to attack them than to attack the British and the French, because it'll probably scare them. Because my theory is, remember, if they're not already in the war versus Japan, they don't want to go to war. They're scared of war.
Mm. And because I've just taken the Romanian oil fields, I suddenly don't feel I need... And I'm on good terms with the Russians, who also make oil.
Mm-hmm.
And I've now got access all the way down the Danube.
But I've got to worry about the Russians a bit, because in the nicest way, they're fighting alongside the Allies in the Far East.
Yeah.
And if I go to war against the Allies, I might well lose not have the Russian support I want, or the Russian trade I want, because the Russians might go, in the nicest way, we're fighting alongside them. They're again sending us troops.
Yeah, but the Germans are short-term thinkers.
Yeah.
And at the moment they don't need. And rather than going east into Poland as kind of their early moves, they've gone south.
Yeah.
So actually what they might be thinking is, I'm going to try and take the Black Sea and get over to Georgia and Baku and all of those and get to the oil ahead of going for Moscow and things.
Mm. Which would have been a far more sensible thing, to be honest.
Yeah. And the Soviets do not have much of a navy, and I don't think they're going to have much of a navy in the Black Sea. So actually you don't need to get too much across there to be taking them on, or you can just invade round the land side.
It depends how friendly Bulgaria is prepared to be to you.
Well, you've just given them nice chunks of Romania, so...
Yes, and you could give them nice chunks of a navy. So it's not your navy forming up there, it's the Bulgarian navy.
Yes.
That's a good way to get rid of your panzer chiefs. And but an actual place where they could actually be useful, because let's be honest, the Black Sea is perfect for a panzer chief.
Yes.
It's far away from anything which might kill it.
Yes. And nothing else there's going to have an 11-inch gun.
Mm-hmm.
Barely anything's going to have the 6-inch guns they've got as secondaries. And you don't need to overtax the engines with long cruisers, which are the unreliable diesels.
Yeah. Black Sea, the perfect theatre of operation for the Deutschland class.
Wow. We've not necessarily found a use for them, but we found a place where they're less useless.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's kind of a shocking experience. I think I'm almost going to say that on that shock, we should probably end this particular, one scenario, because we have now managed to shock ourselves to the point of
we've got
almost
the Italians doing well in North Africa.
Yeah.
We've got the Deutschland class having a function.
Yes.
And we're busily trying to play kind of. I'm trying to think what the right word is. It's sort of hot swapping the different turrets around the different British cruiser classes.
Yes, we have been working, as I will leave in for this, the working out how to try and figure out to make better cruisers for the Royal Navy, because we share a distrust for the viability of the Didos. They're very good for anti-destroyers. If you're dealing with small ships, they will shred them up. And AA, excellent. But honestly, I could do that with some heavily 4.5-inch armed C's, D's, and E's.
Yeah, you can do it with different hulls, and with the bigger hulls. I mean, the problem is the hulls that the Royal Navy is making after the Town class are too small. They're just too small.
They are looking at the treaty limits and going, we have to get within the treaty limit.
Yes, which is a real pity that they committed to this, given that the first of the...
But I have a feeling, again, that there is a difference in the scenario, because you have to remember what gets built versus what doesn't get built is very much a reflective of the war that's being fought. Britain is fighting a convoy war in the Atlantic. That is why battleships, cruisers, aircraft carriers all get delayed at the beginning of World War II. Under these scenarios, Britain is starting off fighting a Pacific War, where it is going to need battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, long-range destroyers. So all those things are going to get built rather rapidly. Instead of them being stalled for a couple of years, they're going to have those programs accelerated as much as Britain can.
Yeah. The other question is, how many of if you've ditched the treaties a bit earlier, and you're suddenly looking at battleships being more of a thing, which of the King George V's do you break out the plans to re-equip to have them with 15-inch guns?
I can't do much about KGV or Prince of Wales. Duke of York is number 3. Can't do much with her either. Possibly Anson and Howe.
That could be quite interesting.
Yeah. The other thing is I'm going to be accelerating my fleet carrier program, so expect illustrious, formidable, victorious, indomitable to be completed to tweet. Indefatigable, yes, probably very quickly. As quickly as I can get those aircraft carriers into service, I'm going to want those carriers into service.
Yeah. And then, what carrier aircraft are you going to go for?
Well, I have this lovely little thing being produced for me by R.J. Mitchell, who is actually producing a very interesting gull-winged version, sort of Spitfire-like aircraft, a Merlin engine, as a single-seat fighter for me. It's well-armed, it's well-equipped, and it has folding wings as well as gull wings. So, and it will fit in most of my lifts. So, yeah, I'll take that, please. Let's be honest, the Fairy Albacore is probably as disappointing as ever, but if I'm doing the beginning of the war, it's going to be Fairy Swordfish, and they're blooming good at night strikes, so bye-bye Japanese Navy.
Yeah.
There also is much money. But longer term, I'm probably going to find myself skipping the Albacore for the Barracuda, or modifying the Albacore to the point at which it makes no difference.
Now, the other thought is when the British Purchasing Commission went to North America in fairly early in 1940, I think it was, and said, "Can you build our planes?" They went, "Give us very short amount of time," and they designed the Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've changed that and we say we want a carrier fighter,
you see, the reason we need a carrier fighter from the Americans isn't because we're not designing good carrier fighters ourselves. It's because we can't produce them because we're prioritizing producing for the Battle of Britain.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you're not fighting the Battle of Britain, we've got some perfectly good designs coming through of our own. What is interesting, therefore, though, and this might sound strange, is you start prioritizing the naval fighters for building them, and they're being prioritized. Maybe you're getting a few Battle of Britain ones through, but not many, for the RAF, for the UK, and these sort of things. It's probably more 50-50 split, so they're not getting the overwhelming preponderance they need. If you start seeing Germany and Italy looking antsy, do you go and then make that request to the Americans again and get the Mustang again, and the Mustang becomes part of the battle? I think I might have just overloaded Daniel's mind then.
Yeah. I'm also just having a look at what the Americans were kind of doing and potentially capable of doing. Because they did have the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp.
Yep.
The prototype of the thing that would turn...
Right then, I'm going to end that part there because it's approaching perilously close to the hour level, and I'm trying to keep each individual part below an hour. So, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll be back for the next part. Thank you. Plus, new phone has arrived, which is, if you've heard any weird beeps or bonks, my old phone finally had died a death when all its power buttons, etc., fell out, so it had reached the point at which even I had to admit I had to give in. So if I miss any messages on Discord or Patreon or anything because of the transferring the phones, I do apologize. I will try and make sure I catch up with everything. Thank you. Take care. Hope you please share, like, and subscribe, and hope you've been enjoying these videos. And that one is a Hawkins. So there's the outline for the Hawkins. As you'll notice, the pictures have now moved up. Because of when I did the editing for the first ones, I had an idea and I changed the position of my camera because Daniel's camera tends to be far lower than mine because of the camera he's using. So I positioned my camera so that I would be lower on the screen as well. I actually quite like the position, so I'm going to keep it there. And that's allowed me to put the images all up above and make them nice and neat and have less of them moving all over the place and sorts of weird stuff, which caused endless fun. Anyway, take care. Hope you've enjoyed, and thank you very much. And please do remember to sharp on sharp. Well, this will go out on Monday, so on the Monday. So sharp on the come to the live this evening at 6 o'clock if you can, and watch what questions we deal with. Daniel will be answering questions on the chat, and I'll be chatting away as I normally am. Because, as I've said repeatedly, I don't know how to duel this. Thank you. And cross fingers for me. My new I am now taking on 2 saving goals simultaneously. And it might be rather silly, but I am. And those 2 goals are new laptop, because this poor little machine has reached about 4 years old and has done a very good service for me, but that's going to be my next target. And an office space, which probably will have to be some form of log cabin for the garden, if I can get my family's agreement, and probably get my sister to buy one because she needs one as well. So thank you very much, everyone, and I need to figure out where to find a money tree. Take care.